Frogman Friday.
Yeah, boy.
Welcome to Frogman Friday. I'm Ryan Birdman Parrott. This episode is brought to you by Frog Fuel. Go check out frogfuel.com and use code Frogman Friday at checkout for your 10% off. Today, our badass guest is Bryce Hansen. He served 12 years in the Army, both enlisted and officer, exiting service as a Green Beret captain. He has found purpose through his passion as an artist. You can follow Bryce on social media, handles to follow the show. For art inquiries, go check out Bryce Hansen on Instagram, bryce.n.hansen. Brother, welcome to the show.
What's up, bro?
Another day.
Let's do it.
Yeah, man. So this is an interesting one because most of the time we're talking about different types of entrepreneurial stuff, growing a business, whatever, which you know how to do all that stuff. But I've never had anybody on who is an artist. And when I say artist, it's not like you spend 5 months trying to draw a stick figure like myself. Like, to be able to visualize in your head and then create something on paper, canvas. You've even done sculptures. I don't even know how that goes. So let's kick it off with the backstory. How did you get into art? When did you first know that you were interested in an artist? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I was a horrible student, going to high school pretty much with grade inflation. Who doesn't have a 4.0 nowadays? And I was walking out of high school with like a 2 point something, and so the Army was definitely in my future in some capacity. But I'd been, drawing and painting through high school, just your normal high school kid that goes to art class, like no specific training beyond that. But I was just like, I really like it. It was my favorite thing to do in school. It was the only thing I felt like I was successful in an academic setting, even though that's far from academic. And so I really intended to go to art school, finishing high school, thinking I was going to get into some kind of like art program in a state college or something like that. But because of my grades, I couldn't even get in the entry point, like admissions. So I had zero chance of getting into art school. And so then I was all in on the Army, because I really didn't have too many other options. So lo and behold, I ended up, of all places, being able to go to West Point despite my bad grades. Go figure. But I went through the prep school, so I was already enlisted. And my first sergeant decided to push me towards West Point because he found this like issue of like, you're a horrible soldier, but we got you on the books and we got to find something to do with you. You ask why way too much. That sounds like upper management written all over you. And we're just running out of rifles for you to clean and for lack of KP duty. Like you can't be a professional KP guy. Needless to say, I wasn't a great soldier either. So off to West Point, where they send bad soldiers apparently. And so I designed a bunch of tattoos and things like that. Now this is in the late 90s. So, tribal tattoos were all the rage. So I'm sitting in class and either drawing my hand, or I'm drawing something or designing tattoos for a buddy of mine. And so that's really like where my mind is usually at. It's on something creative. And I like coming up with concepts more than I like to actually produce something. So I just spend a lot of time in my nothing box, just letting creative ideas just flow in. And then, I have a rolling list of like 20 projects that I tell myself I'll get to eventually. And I might, by the time I finish one, I got 5 more in the Rolodex. And so really where I like to spend my time is just in the creative process. And so I continue, I was in the, went to Korea and I was in Germany for a while. And those are great places to launch from as far as travel. And so I was traveling all over the world on my R&R, on my leave. And I was taking a sketchbook with me, drawing what I saw. Some guys get keychains or magnets, or they patches, or they collect something. And I would sit down in front of a monument, a cathedral, or just scenery. And I'd sit 4, 5, 6 hours there and just sketch it out. And then I was in Barcelona and I got robbed. And my whole backpack was stolen from me. And my, sketchbook that I've had for like, at that point, like 15 years was gone. So all my world travels documented, just gone. And I was gutted. I was just like, well, I've been rejected out of art school, and that's that. So I didn't touch a pencil or a paintbrush for almost 9 years at that point. After that, I just kind of like, that was it. Fast forward, I got through the pipeline and went to the Q course, did 3 years over in Germany with 110 as a detachment commander, and picked up a contracting job out of the UAE. So I spent about 5 years there. But my first 2 years, I was really only going to work for about 5 hours a day. And that includes breakfast and PT. And so I was coming home, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And my wife is, like, what's going on here? After about 3 months, she's just like, this isn't working. Like, word for word, she nails it sometimes. She's like, I did not marry you to spend time with you. So she's like, you got to get a hobby, you got to do something. And so she wanted me to go back to school, get a master's degree or something, which I ended up doing online. But there's just not enough hours in a day to keep me busy. Coming off the group, there's just, what am I supposed to do? I have all this free time. I don't, you be on the teams or whatever, and you pull 12, 14-hour days consistently. Now all of a sudden you're doing 4 or 5 hours. You're like, that for me, that was a big culture shock, and that was a hard step in transition. And so really that spare time, that's when I started painting, and I stopped drawing, and I just got into painting full time with my discretionary time. So that's kind of where it really picked back up. And it started slow, maybe like 2 paintings a year. And then for 5 years. And then when I moved back to the United States, I'd been overseas for about 14 years at that point. And I moved back to the United States in 2018, and really kind of trying to transition to be a civilian. And I tried everything. I tried finance, I tried energy, I tried operations, I worked for the government for a bit. And in between all those failed ventures, I was unemployed a lot. So I think in 5 years, I think I'm on my 10th job in 5 years. So clearly a success story. So glad this isn't a transition podcast about how you transition successfully from the military. But in all of those periods of unemployment, I was cranking paintings out left and right, because again, it's like, what do you do when you have all this time on your hands? And I was thinking, well, unemployment's just like retirement without the money. So I was like telling myself, if I get enough paintings and I hone my craft, then eventually somebody will discover me, just, with no social media presence, like no, website that sells direct to consumer. I'm like, but eventually somebody will discover me. So I'm just cranking out paintings and trying to do local shows and things like that. Some really cool venues like House of Blues and things. But what I discovered is, a lot of people want original art, and they want to pay IKEA prices. So I was like, well, this is another one of my failed ventures. Like I can't even break even to cover the cost of my materials. And so that, I had an honest conversation with my wife, who's my harshest critic. So we have 2 categories in our house. We have the keepers. Those go up in the house, but those are hard, because if she likes something, it's hard for me to create something. Otherwise I'd have paintings all over the house. Like you wouldn't see wall, you would just see color. And so for one painting to get bumped off the wall and get replaced with something else, it's got to be pretty good in her opinion. Everything else, the other category, is garage. She's like, that's not a keeper. Either throw it away, sell it, which we know that's not going to happen, or put it in the garage. And at some point, I think I had close to like 25 paintings in my garage. And I started exploring different things through my journey as an artist. So when I first got out of the military, I was really struggling with this whole idea, because I'm spending a lot of time with my wife, and now I have 1 kid, and I'm really struggling with how to connect in what I was like, what am I missing in my life? And it's love. And I could say that I love you, but I didn't know what that meant. And so for me, love was sex. Like they were one and the same. So a lot of my early pieces are, you know, subliminal or sublime eroticism. So I painted a lot of nude females or something that implied some kind of sexual connectivity without being graphic or explicit. Um, and always gauging the temperature of my wife of what's acceptable. What are the limits of what's acceptable content? And she's just like, that's, if you're going to paint that, that's going straight to the garage or a closet, because the reason why we don't have more friends is because of you. And if we start putting up this kind of stuff, we're definitely not going to have any friends. So, because of my mouth, I'll say stupid things without processing. And then people are like, civilians that have a sense of social standing, they'll be like, shit, we can't hang out with this guy. He's a loose cannon. Yeah. So I kind of have like a couple, genres, you know, periods, you know, I didn't have a cubism or a blue period. I had a female and sex period early on. And then I moved back to the United States, and our common friend, Carrie, you know, sitting down with me, took me under his wing, looking at my art. And he said, you know, you got some talent here. He goes, but well, I don't know what you want to do with this, but nobody's going to buy this stuff. You know, a dude might like that, but he's not going to bring it home and be like, hey, babe, look what I bought. And a girl's probably not going to buy it because she doesn't want to like misconstrue what her neighbors might think, you know? So he's like, so he challenged me to be like, why don't you paint something different? Try to paint something. If you want to sell this stuff, you got to paint what is socially acceptable, that people are willing to be seen buying. And then, because people are buying a story. So they want to be able to show the art and then tell a story about it. It's less to do with the quality, in my opinion. It's less to do about the quality or even the content. You know, what is the subject matter of the art? It's what story can people tell to their friends in a braggadocious way of like, check out me, I'm high society, I can buy original art. And so you have to give them an opportunity to have a story in your content. This is if you want a widespread audience, you know, widespread sales. If you're doing just one specific thing, well, then you're minimizing your buying population, because you're only people that want that thing. And so I try to change it up. So like right now, so I did a lot of, you know, random paintings at the advice of Carrie, my mentor. You know, so I'd have like an eyeball in a book, you know, and the book pages kind of form like an eyelash, and some other things like that that are not objectionable to any audience. You know, the story is whatever that person who buys it wants to tell their neighbors or their house guests. And then I tried to get some bigger pieces done. I had a couple commissions for like corporate settings. So I'd do like their corporate logo with something that's iconic from their city and things like that. So I kind of branched out, and those were my least favorite things to do. There's just no personal satisfaction. And so I had to get back to like, what am I doing here? It's like, I like spending time in my own head, in my creative space, and coming up, and it's almost like problem solving of, I have a concept and I get inspiration from different places. Maybe it's a lyric. The last couple of years, I've really been focusing on music lyrics, and then trying to materialize it visually. What does that lyric what it might mean? And sometimes I just take the lyric completely out of context. You know, some songs are telling a story, or it's a narrative, or there's a political message or something. And I might take a single line and completely strip out the original, the vocalist's intent of the song, and then just be like, all right, well, these 10 words, what would that look like on canvas, void of any larger context? So the source of the content could be wide ranging. And so that's kind of where I was at for my second phase. And then the phase I'm kind of in right now is it's post ibogaine treatment, where which is a plant-based medicine, as you know, which is really addressing my first phase, which is my disconnect from the concept of love, saying I love you, but not really knowing what that means beyond words. You know, the videos that always stuck out, you know, they live rent free in my head, are the videos that are of a groom standing at the altar, and he turns around and the music's playing, and he sees his bride for the first time, and they start crying. And I'm like, what a bitch.
Hmm.
Like, who does that? Like, be a man.
Yeah.
But then after a while, I'm thinking, and I keep watching these videos. It's like, why am I so fascinated about this concept of a man crying, looking at his wife or his child? And I'm like, that would never happen to me. But so I recognize there's clearly a gap in my emotional literacy or capabilities. And I really didn't understand that. And so that's kind of after knowing Marcus for like 5 years, and him always pinging me about it. And finally, and then with your your advice and your leading the charge, that was really my whole intent, was to figure out what is this love thing. And that I knew that I had such a deficit in my life that I was willing to go to those what I deemed at the time extremes, to discover something that so many people in this world understand it, and I just didn't get it, and I felt I was incapable of understanding it. So a lot of the paintings that I'm now in, I'm kind of like in my third phase, is more along those lines of post realization. But I'm trying to capture in a lot of a series that I'm trying to wrap up now, which is Screaming Soldiers, which is, but again, it's kind of niche. It's people that are maybe military or veteran friendly or first responder friendly, but also mental health focus of an audience or a consumer that is capturing the energy of maybe the silence, even though the individual screaming, right? So it's the silence or the deafening silence of the inner turmoil. Maybe some people scream and they let it out. Sometimes it's just they're screaming on the inside and you can't even see it, but they're dying to get it out, literally. And so I kind of been working on that concept post Ibogaine for the last year or so, and I think I've really got it under control because I spent a lot of time painting. But like I said, I really enjoy coming up with the concepts first, and so I might spend, if it takes me 40 hours to do a painting, 40 to 80, 100 hours depending on the size and the complexity, I might spend half that amount of time. So it's a 100-hour painting. I might spend 25 to 50 hours in concept development, and just wrestling with the concept, the configuration and the composition, on how I'm going to capture the essence of what I'm trying to convey. But sometimes, like a poet, you read a poem and you're like, this is what I think it means, and this is maybe what the poet was trying to convey, and you're wildly off the mark, right? If that dilemma didn't happen, then most literature classes and poetry classes wouldn't exist, because we would just ask the poet, what did you mean? I think the great part about some of the phase that I'm in right now, post psychedelics, is people are able to interpret the content, and they're in their own struggle, in their own pain, because that, for me, that's one of life's most consistent universal truths, is that life is pain. And everybody's got it, and everybody's going through it, and we put on these masks to pretend like we're not going through it, which is such a farce. And I think it really stifles our ability to have meaningful friendship and love, whether that's a brotherly love or a romantic love. But it's because we're stifling ourselves because we don't want people to know the truth. And so I think some of my more recent paintings are resonating with people that are from the military circle, and then some that are not. I've had a lot of feedback on some of my recent Screaming Soldier ones, people who have never done psychedelics, never have done plant-based medicine, and yet it resonates with them. And they're like, I get it. And I don't ask them what they get, because that monologue is just for them. That that's just it's dialogue. It's between them and themselves of what it means to them. And that's, for me, been the most rewarding experience as far as on my art journey. Selling them, great, love it. That's a short dopamine validation that somebody appreciates my art and wants to take it home with them. But longer term and more soul satisfying is just a simple comment, on a post, and they're like, hey man, I get it. I don't follow up. I just say thank you. I don't follow up because I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. But if the painting is a vehicle where they can have a dialogue with themselves, or maybe same way as I started painting eroticism in the beginning, it was really to have a conversation and create a dialogue with my wife, because I was trying to express love, but for me, love was sex. And so I couldn't, but it was trying to start in a very crude way, as some people have told me, trying to start a conversation. And so that's, I think, really the where I'm at consistently. That's one theme that has traveled through the last, 93 paintings that I've done to some effect over the last 10 years. I started out slow, but now I'm, started out with like maybe 2 or 3 a year. And now I'm doing, 10 to 15 a year. So it's really ramped up, and it's been consuming for me. And so, and I really I do take criticism well, but not really. So there's a lie and a truth in one sentence.
New painting idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now I'm going to wrestle. Thanks. Now I'm going to wrestle with that one for like a week. What? And I'll try to match a lyric to go with it too. So awesome homework assignment. Yeah, so that's it. I mean, I'll do commissions for people. They're honestly, and this is bad business, I'm a horrible business person. As I was telling you before the show, I can't even figure out Shopify. Like, it's just, I'm bad at business. To tell you how bad at business I am, I've commissioned and delivered 8 paintings, and I never got paid for them. I'm horrible at business. I should ask for down payments. No, make that 9, because one person, I sent it to them and they're like, oh, we think you'd really do good at this. And can you do like this really miniature painting of my uncle and his best friend from Vietnam? I'm like, well, can you send me pictures of their faces? And we're talking about photos that are like a photo of a photo that was taken in Vietnam 50 years ago, and neither face is straight on. But she's like, but I want both faces looking at them and like embracing. And I don't have a single photo where they're both in the same picture at the same time. And I was like, well, this is what I kind of charge. And she's like, well, how much? I can't afford that. Can you make it smaller and I pay you less? And I'm like, well, that's not really what I do. And so I sent it to her, and she's like, I just thought it'd be better than this. And I'm like, look through 93 paintings that I've done. Have you ever seen me even attempt something this small? Or just the fact that you want me to paint 2 people that I can't see their face? And I'm like, and I told her, I was like, look, you're asking me to do the impossible, and this is not what I do. She's like, no, I believe in you. As soon as she got it, she's like, yeah, no, this isn't good. And I was like, well, just keep it. Like, don't pay me. So let's make that 9 that I've done and haven't been painted for. And then I've had people say, oh, I love this. Can you make me another one in the same style? Sure. Well, how soon do you need it? Oh, I need it in like 3 weeks. Oh, so I drop everything, crush it, drive 5 hours to deliver it. And they're like, and even though they've already seen it and they know I'm coming, they're like, yeah, no, it's not for me. And I'm like, bro, you're killing me. I got to drive 5 hours back with a no. Like, you got to save me the time and energy. So so for me now, even though I spent all this time trying to chase commissions and chase the business perspective of turning my time and my passion into money, now I just want to paint what I see in my head. And if you like it, great, buy it, But in all honesty, I'll circle back. I got 25 paintings in my garage, and I get to see them every time I come home. I don't have to go to one room to another to see my paintings. I love them in the garage because I'm surrounded. There's nothing in my garage except color. So I love it. So I'm almost reluctant to sell things now, even though that's not the point of this podcast. I do. My wife's just like, we're running out of space. Like, you got to sell some of these things. Like,
yeah, didn't I see some on the side of your house? Like, you've lost all the inside space and now you're working the walls on the outside.
Yeah. I need to start. Like, eventually I'm gonna start painting the fence, and just selling 2x4s and like off my fence. Yeah. So that's it. Like, I still do commissions. I'm working on one right now. I'm working for a couple commissions for somebody, but it's in my style. It's in my, and I work a lot concepts on Photoshop, and I've learned this at least. So I taught myself Photoshop for this specific person, for this specific purpose, is let me learn how to put a concept into Photoshop first, email it over, and I'm like, it's gonna look like 90% like this. Are you okay with that? Slight deviation, but it's basically gonna look like this. And that way I have their bless off before I start putting paper to canvas or paint to canvas. And that's dropped drastically. You know, people are like, oh, that's not what I thought it would be. No, you saw it ahead of time. So I like now just to paint what I want to paint. And if you like it, buy it. If you want an original, cool, we can talk about it. If you want a print, I'll just run down to my local store, make a print and slap it in the mail and send it to you. I'm still a horrible business person. Like just the two commissions that I'm working on right now, no down payment. Like no, like I'm just like I set myself up for failure. This person's a good person and I know they're good for it, but I have no idea what they're going to pay me, because I'm almost too cowardly to be like, hey, this is, because I honestly don't believe I deserve what some people are paying me. And so I'm afraid to say, hey, this is what my time is worth, because it's hard for an artist to say, how do you value your time? How do you value, if I can do a painting in 40 hours, what's that worth? Well, it's not 40 hours. I've been working for 10 years and I have 93 paintings under my belt. All that time and refinement goes into each painting. So what is that worth? But I still feel like a jerk sometimes being like, hey, is this an okay number? And then we'll see. But it's the start of a conversation. So for me, I love to sell my artwork. I love to sell prints because then I get to keep it. But originals obviously are more money. And I love to have conversations with people and try to work with them on a concept as far as a commission. But I'll be honest, that's my least favorite thing to do. But it's easier if they have a concept. If they have a concept, that's actually the hard part. They have a concept, like I had somebody say, I'd like you to paint me, and I didn't do this one, something that captures the 4 seasons, but with a military theme. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to spend like 3 weeks trying to figure that one out. And whatever thought you already have in your head, visualization, I know it's going to be wildly different from mine. And so before I spend 3 weeks trying to wrestle a very abstract concept like that with no money down and no commitment, I'm like, that's not really where I'm at anymore. Like I try to tackle those things, but it's not worth it. I'd rather have somebody send me a picture or a couple pictures, high resolution, preferably, not from 50 years ago. And then I can paint those, you know, but yeah, I'm willing to work with people. I'm willing to have a conversation with people as far as what are they trying to do? What are they trying to accomplish? And ultimately, what kind of story are they trying to tell? Because I have the stories that I'm trying to tell through my art, and maybe it's the same story that they're trying to tell, but a lot of times it's different. And sometimes my paintings are just a vehicle for them to tell their story. And those are very richly rewarding commissions.
Well, I'll tell you what.
So that's kind of my journey.
It's been awesome since I met you. You know, first time I went over your house and got to see the paintings that you had started, and this years ago, the eroticism stuff. I was like, so who's the model for this stuff? And you're like, that's my wife mostly. And I was like, oh, okay. Super cool.
Yeah, and that can be an awkward conversation. I mean, I told you, now everybody knows. But it's like that can be an awkward conversation too, because then people are like, because she's wicked smart, you know, and she's just like, I don't want people to objectify me or think less of me because I'm facilitating your creative expression, you know. It's almost she's humoring me. I'm like, hey, I need you to do this. I need you to pose this way. I need you to put your hand here. And then I need to hold it there so I can move the light so I can get a certain shadow effect. And she's just like, oh, this is your birthday present. Like, I'm going to stand here for 5 minutes. You move the lights around as fast as you want. Like, that's it. That's it. I'm not standing here for more than 5 minutes. I'm like, all right, cool. So she humors me, and rather she tolerates my creative my creative urges. So yeah, that can be an awkward, well, now everybody knows. So
Well,
yeah,
not
go
all of
figure.
them. Not all of them. Some of them are actually me. So in case you were wondering,
That's
you'll be
true.
able to, yeah.
Listen, there are some pieces that I don't post online, whether they're a private commission, for people who are more risque, or things like that. And I don't post them, so nobody's even seen them. And that's kind of where your paintings fall in line with.
Ooh,
You know, there
yeah.
you have a big following in, some third world countries.
I
So you
wonder,
have
I
your own
wonder.
art. Yeah,
I
you
forgot
have
to
I
shave
have
my
an
legs.
OnlyFans. Yeah, oh, I have an OnlyFans set up for you. It's blocked in this country, but it's just paintings of you. So you're welcome.
Do we have followers? How can we use that? It's funny because looking at your paintings, though, one thing that I really noticed, the details, again, I like to consider myself creative in my brain only, but I can't lay it down. I can't do anything with it. It does not leave my head. And so whether it's
Yeah.
drawing or writing or any of that stuff, it is what it is. So it's stuck up here, but I notice details from others who especially can lay it down. The things that you do, putting the gold leafing into your paintings, putting visual effects into the paintings that most people, it would take them some time to understand or realize, and then they see it and they're like, wow, what intentionality there. So this new painting
Yeah.
that's coming out, it's of Iwo Jima, and there's a flamethrower, and in the back he's got dog tags weaved into it, and it's just that's those little elements right there make everything. It's not just the one focal point, but it's all those minute details.
Yeah.
And then going into
Well, I
different.
think,
Go ahead.
sorry, that, and you keyed in on the dog tags the first time when you saw that. I sent you just a phone, photo from my phone as I was working on it. And you're like, are those dog tags? I was like, yeah. And you came up with the idea of like, what if you did a whole painting on top of dog tags? And those ones I was using were blank. And it was your idea to like put people's names of the fallen, and make it even more customizable and more meaningful. It makes it more niche for sure, and a less of an audience that would be willing to consume it visually or financially. But yeah, you're the one who had that idea in your head. Now you saw something that I did, and then you're like, well, why'd you stop there? Why aren't you going all the way? Which, unfortunately, working with you for the last couple of years is the bane of my existence, because you don't do anything small. You're like, let's go all the way. You better be ready. If you're not ready to go, get out of the boat, because we're going all the way, baby. I'm like, oh, this guy, big
Wow.
ideas.
When we
But
get up, when
in
we
this
get up this
particular,
show,
it's gonna
we're gonna
be,
have more.
it's gonna be, yeah, because I still owe you that painting, um, for I think one of the Navy SEAL Foundation or charity that you wanted to do. And we're gonna do something. I think, I don't remember. I'm not a SEAL, so and I don't read your books or watch your movies. So Neptune, I think it's Neptune Spear. So we'll do a we'll do a canvas made out of dog tags with all of the Navy SEALs, their data on the dog tags, and that will be the base canvas. And then we'll do a really kick-ass operator painting on top of that. So there's, I try to have meaning at, be deliberate. There's canvas is a blank space, and you paint on top of it. But why can't the canvas also be telling part of the story? So as you were saying, all those layers, purposeful and deliberate, to have a narrative and a dialogue. Really, that's the most important part. So hang tight, folks. More to follow. You'll see that one by the end of the year. And I think I'm going to do one for 9/11 next year, and try to do something for FDNY on top of fire hose. So make a canvas out of fire hose, and then try to do something for that. So that maybe that's the next phase, is start playing with the idea of canvas and what is an acceptable venue, to put an idea on and capture it.
That's legendary.
So,
Well, he does cross over. So I was creating this stunt years ago, that would incorporate Travis Pastrana on doing some crazy stuff with Back to the Future. And he shows up one day and he's got this cool Back to the Future logoed sign painted. It says Back to the Circus. It was like, Holy crap, that's so cool. And then he's done a sniper painting before, which was really, really cool. And it's just the one big thing I love about his military art is that he functions comic books into it. And so you can actually see like the comic book painting or the comic book pages weaved into it. And it just gives it that cool feel of like present yet back in the past. And yeah, that's just, it was really, really neat. So we're going to post all these pictures of the paintings he wants you to see right now up on this show, so you'll be able to see it. And again, you can we're going to put all this information at the end of the show, so that you want to reach out to Bryce directly to talk about maybe what he has on his site, or potentially a commission that falls more into the vein of letting him be creative instead of dictating everything. Awesome. That being said, I want to finalize the show with I always ask everybody, it's simple, it's a hero story. You share something about somebody you serve with, who changed your life or helped you in your life, that most people wouldn't know the story or the name of. Would you be willing to share something like that?
Yeah. So the first name that comes to mind is actually somebody who understood the concept of love, and I always thought it made him weird and different, but he was my roommate in Korea. His name was Chris Atencio. He was a phenomenal, he was probably 28 or 30 at 9/11, and he decided he was going to enlist. He was what's known as a waterman. So he was an original member of Wedge Crew, body surfer, surfboard, boogie board, longboard, you name it. The guy just wanted to be in the water. Like, he lived and breathed it, and he decided, so hippie, just the furthest thing that you would see, like coming off the beach and be like, you know what, I'm going to join the army post 9/11. He ended up being my roommate in Korea. And just a goofy guy, but just a fun, loving spirit. And I remember like waking up just in time for PT, and he'd already been up for like an hour doing yoga and having mantras. And I'm just like, you're fucking weird, bro. But it started to give me pause of like, what is he doing that's I'm missing in my life? How is he finding fulfillment and self-actualization? And I'm just over here trying to be like a strong ranger. And he's been with me in my mind and my heart for so many years, because sometimes it's just like, what would Chris do in this moment? How would he be viewing this situation? How would he find joy and fulfillment in, the most austere environments? And because the guy no matter what we were going through, he always had a smile, and he was always pontificating about something much higher than the suck that we were going through. And I just couldn't fathom his ability to disassociate pain and fatigue. And he was just working for something in his own life that was so much higher. Unfortunately, that level of philosophical stoicism is not something that's necessarily rewarded in the military, right? They want you to just shut up and color, follow the lines. And he was not a line colorer. He wasn't even drawing on the paper. He was trying to create a masterpiece in the sky. And so he really struggled in the military trying to find a home. He made it. He got promoted up, and eventually, oh, by the way, the guy lived all over the world. He just hopped on a plane one day and before the military and flew to Japan. And he's like, I'm going to find a job. Just got off the plane and started walking around until he found a school. And he's like, can I teach English here? Why? Are you an English teacher? No, but I speak English and I'd like to learn Japanese. Like, this was the kind of guy that was just kind of like fly by the seat of his pants. And he didn't march to a different drummer. He just marched he was the conductor of his own band. And, picked up 7 languages, and he just struggled post-military to find a way to continue to create a symphony. And he fell by his own hand just within a month or so after getting out of the military. And that's one that I've never been able to shake. And because his life was so beautiful, and he was such a creative, And it hit really close to home because I was idolizing him at the same time that I was denigrating his ability to move forward and remove himself from the shit we were going through. And now I idolize him even more for his ability that I'm trying to achieve what he had already mastered 20 years ago. So when I was making fun of him. So that's something that I hold near and dear to my heart.
Powerful, man. Thanks for sharing. Man.
So yeah, way to end this one on a happy moment.
Hey, you know what? You spoke his name. People will know his story. You know, that's important.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing that.
Yep.
Well, it has been informative. It has been fun. It has been high and it has been low and all in the middle. And I appreciate your time, brother, for being on. We do have lots of work to do outside of this show, and I will be calling you.
Yep.
But
headed to the grocery store. I gotta pick up some beverages. I gotta make some phone calls, venue checks. Yep. I'm on top of it.
We got more.
I'll see you in Cape Town.
Yes, for sure. All right. Well, this is with Bryce Hansen. Go check him out on Instagram. That's bryce.n.hansen. That's on IG. He also is on LinkedIn pretty powerfully. So go check out either of those, and we'll have all the handles to follow this. Appreciate you, brother.